Hey, what's up everybody? Rob Marzullo here, Ram Studio Comics. Welcome back. So I want to show you, actually let me go ahead and flip this real quick. Flip it. There we go. Okay, so I want to show you a little bit of behind the scenes on something I'm doing here. So this is actually for a new course that I'm working on. I'm actually doing two courses right now. So it's not some kind of juggling, but it's kind of fun because one is on part two on how to improve your figure drawing, characters, in action, and then this one is it's going to be painting in Photoshop. So it's kind of a basic guide to learning Photoshop for digital painters. And I wanted to do this character art, and I always kind of draw or paint the art first just to warm up on it before I actually explain the process. So I wanted to do this Spartan dude, and always enjoy the movies and the history and stuff like that, which I know the two are pretty far out from one another, but it's good stuff. So, but I figured I would give you a sneak peek into this and then explain a little bit of the process. So maybe you're gonna check out this video, but not the course. Always try to do different content for people with different needs and things like that. So just to explain a little bit of the process, you can see I kind of started off with a very basic rough sketch. Very crude, and this is imaginative drawing. It's not I look at pictures, but not this isn't a picture of anybody, and I didn't use a picture of this same helmet. I basically I create what's called a mood board, and I learned that from storyboards. And basically you just take a bunch of different pictures, not even the same angles, and you just set them off to the side in a big collage type fashion, and you pull inspiration from those. So the really neat thing about doing that is it basically will help you to pull from that and get bits and pieces of it, but not, you're not copying anything directly. And you learn a lot from that process. I always talk about that in my videos. I think it's really important to not rely too heavily on anything really, but definitely not on reference. You want to use reference, but you want to quickly learn how to make your own thing, even if it's not as good, I think, as it could be with reference, like doing a paint over or something like that. Because then, if not, you become really needy, really needy. Sorry, you become the reference becomes a crutch essentially, and you don't want that. You want to be able to develop things on your own and put your own spin on it. Which you generally will do that anyways through the paint process, but at the same time, you want to use reference just as a quick guide or something to kind of bring you back into. Like I might study reference and look at just the grit of the armor that I'm looking at and put that grit into this, for instance. I might look at reference of a person's face and look at the way the light hits the eyes. Like for instance, I still got to clean this up quite a bit, but you can see I've got like the lighting coming under the eyes here. I'll use this brush to kind of get a little bit of that texture in there, but it's not looking right yet. I'll keep tweaking it until I get it right. So I'll put like, usually there's like a double highlighter. I like to do the double highlight like that. And sometimes there's a little glare across the eye, if you want to make it look more wet or whatever. But you also got to think in terms of what this character's going to look like with that helmet on. So if you're not looking at a picture of this exact thing, which good luck finding this exact type of shot, you have to be able to imagine that and use bits and pieces of different pictures and reference them that way, and then put your own style and spin on it. So what I mean by that is, like, for instance, if I was to take this area here, like this, and I do some paint work in here. Keep in mind you can hide the selection if you don't want to look at it with Command H, and it's still there, but it's hidden. See if I go like that. Pretty neat, huh? But anyways, so I can get in here, start doing a little bit more work in here, but I got to make sure that I don't put too much light source here, because I also have to think about this drop shadow from the helmet. So what I like to do is just, paint some of this in, look at maybe a face that, just study a face from this angle or something like that, and get the lighting information, but then I have to come back and I got to think about, well, there's going to be a bit of a drop shadow from the helmet, so I got to paint that downward. Usually I'll use multiply. I don't know why, I just think it works a little bit better. And I knock back that information. So, and I kind of keep doing that all throughout, and I bounce around. And sometimes, I'll admit, sometimes I'm just painting until it looks right. You know, hopefully not too much, but there are times when I'm sitting there trying to get the right look and feel to something, and it's almost like I'll know it when I see it, or I'll get into a groove, I guess, and then start hammering out something. It's kind of weird how inspiration works like that. But, you know, so hopefully you see, like, even that, it starts to look a little bit more like the eye is pushed back in that helmet versus right here. And there's a couple ways you could do that. Another way, if you don't like creating that selection, you can actually just create a layer, brush in the shadow over top here. Am I getting that? Oh, it's got to be set to normal if you do it this way. But then you could set this to multiply, I believe. Oh, maybe not. Maybe it's got to be set to normal. Oh, duh. Okay, problem is if you hide the selection, you got to remember the selection is hidden. Command D to deselect. Maybe I just shouldn't do that. Okay, so back over here. Whoops. Oh well, that's why it's YouTube, folks. That's where I make all my mistakes. Okay, so, you know, so you can see I can brush that in there. And if I was to get in there and really check it out, you know, I'd notice there was a shadow going across that right there. So I got to go back and erase that. Sometimes it won't even look bad, but, you know, I'll just go back and erase it. So that's another way you can drop those shadows in. You know, there's really no right or wrong way to do this stuff. You know, it's just, you just keep working up the forms. And one of the reasons why I like doing this side by side is I can really see it take shape. And, you know, I could see like, oh, did I have something going in the right direction in the previous step? And then I maybe did something in the wrong direction. So I really like working it up this way. Obviously, it's a little bit harder when it's a full-on shot. You have to do it with the layers and turn them on and off. But same idea, you know. So yeah, so let me see what else I can explain here. So once I do that effect like you saw here, I'll just hit Command E. And you can notice if I toggle that on and off, I could see where it's bled over a bit. But it's armor. It really doesn't hurt it in my opinion. So I'm just going to merge it down. And all I really do here, obviously not to the part where I'm going to start adding the color yet. I mean, I guess I could really, but what I like to do is get as much value range in there as I can and really beef up all the textures and try to get lots of little subtleties. You know, right now I'm trying to get like these little, like armor has all these little tiny glares, you know, from nicks or scratches or imperfections. So I'm trying to get some of that in there. And I'll be honest, whenever I'm doing texture, I just kind of scribble around and doodle. I don't really have some perfect idea when it comes to textures or imperfections. I do have some brushes. Let me see here. I got some ones I made for imperfections, probably like scratches. Where's that one? Rippled glass, scratches. Oh, that's way too heavy, but I can drop a layer over top. Throw a couple of these bad boys in there, that, and then drop the opacity back, and then I can even throw a blending mode in there. Not multiply, was I thinking overlay? Yeah, that's close. Maybe knock it back even a little more. Because, you know, I can always use this for reference as I'm painting. That's kind of how I use a lot of my textures anyways. Is I'll throw them in there like this, and I probably should have got them in there a little more early on. But then I'll paint through them a bit, and I'll show you that in a second here. I think like this. The beauty of it being on a floating layer too is you can really edit the work quite well. So let's say that those are the type of scratches I want, and I got to make sure, what is it? Scratches, the glare is usually on the bottom and the shadow's on the top. So let's grab another brush, back to the chalk painter that I like so much. And let's get in there. What did I say now? Glare is on the bottom. So I could do this a couple ways. I could actually cheat, which I often do, and just take this and hold Alt and drag, and then make sure the transparent pixels are locked. I'm just going to try this. It may not work, but it's worth a shot. And let's brush that in. Yeah, and it kind of works. I mean, it looks way too impactful in your face kind of thing. But you can always knock stuff like this back. Whoa. So it's pretty close. I mean, what I would do to make this look more what I'm after, I would probably take both these layers, hold Shift, grab both, Command J, Command E. So now I've got a copy of those merged together like that. And then play with the opacity or blending mode again. Oh, screen makes the black disappear. I don't want that. I think overlay looks the best. And then knock that back a little bit, or I could even just leave it full till and then take a soft brush. Probably just do it by hand, but and then I'll just erase parts of it because I want it to look more, uneven. I don't want these lines to be all perfectly even like they are. So I'll just knock little areas back here and there. And it should up the realism. And obviously the other way to do this is just to brush them in this way so they're not, to paint them in this way. But see how if you take that little middle off there, it looks a lot more almost like the blade hit and then hit again, like it nicked off the side of it. It's funny how you have to think about all these things as you're painting a warrior helmet. You must imagine him doing battle. Arr. Yeah, I don't know why I just did a pirate noise, but you know what I'm talking about. For Sparta! Something like that. I'm probably making a fool of myself, but oh well. That's what YouTube's all about. Being silly. Okay, so yeah, so hopefully you see that taking shape, and you just kind of keep playing with it. I would probably mix this up with actually painting it, but I'm actually liking a lot less of this. Like there was just too much of it. Like he looks like he just really getting his butt kicked, and we want to make sure that he doesn't look like he's not getting picked on out there on the battlefield. But then again, if he's got this many marks and he survived, then he's a pretty tough dude. I guess there's a few ways to look at that. Okay, let's take that to there. Always check the work from a distance. Yeah, so you can see even from back here, though, it adds a lot more effect than what we got over here. And again, that's kind of why I do this, where I check the work, I add in these little effects, and I do a lot more too, where I'll take, like, because I don't like when you get all up close like this and it doesn't look realistic. So I would probably, like I said before, I would drop this into the layer and then paint back over top, because I'm just like that. I want my stuff to look better and more well thought out than just a kind of a, I don't know what you'd call it, not a filter, but like I cheaped out here or something. It just looks too cheap. So what I would do is just get in here and rough up the edges. And you don't really got to do them all, but if you do a few little marks the other way, and I think here we're going to get something different. And you also want to rough up the shadow, so and the highlight. You don't want them all to be the same distance across. So you just kind of break this up a bit. Something like that. Even wedge into the highlight area. Move the highlight by switching to white. Same thing, rough up the highlight. You want certain areas where it's brighter. So this type of brush can help you, but then you got to make sure that you don't have to go back and do too much edit work, or it's like, I could have just did this by hand. But unless of course you're not as into drawing this stuff, then these types of brushes can be better. Likewise, you could probably mix it with a filter and rough up the edges before you merged it down. So there's just lots of ways to make this stuff happen. So it's starting to look more realistic, and then I'll probably brush across it a little bit. Like one of the things I notice with textures is it's better if you're not so specific, and you're not so like you're not trying to draw all the time. Like you really want to make sure that when you're painting, that you really brush across your work, like all different directions, like just getting messy with it essentially, because if not, it'll have this overly spherical or rounded shape, or maybe just overly cubical shape, whatever shape you're really doing or you're repeating. You don't want too much in repetitive patterns, I guess, or if any at all. So the more you study like realism, you'll realize a lot of things. Like for instance, you'll realize that There's lots and lots of texture, like even the skin. I haven't dropped that in yet, but I'll end up adding some stipple texture, especially right through here. It's just not smooth like you see here. I think the nose is a bit crooked, but I'll fix that too. So you start realizing that. It's also one of the reasons why I try not to use the smudge brush too entirely much, because you'll tend to give everything this kind of pasty look or something, this overly airbrushed look. It's also why you can't just use the soft brush. Although I've actually seen people do some pretty amazing paintings with the soft brush and make it look like it wasn't all just soft brush. So I mean, I guess if you've got a really good understanding, because if you make the soft brush small enough, you can get a hard edge shadow with it. But you got to be aware of that, and you got to really pay attention to that, or your stuff will come out too overly airbrushed. And if you smudge too much, you'll basically get rid of all this nice texture. You want to leave some of that stuff in there. So I try to paint back and forth and be aware of that a little bit anyways. Yeah, so I'm hoping this this next course does really well for people. You'll be able to get it on Udemy and my Gumroad and things like that. But I'm pretty excited about both of them, really. Putting a lot of effort into them. So hopefully everybody will see the value and let me know what they think about that. Yeah, and keep in mind, multiply is a really great blending mode, because I think what it does, when you work on normal mode, you'll knock back some of these highlights, sometimes a little too much, but multiply will add the darken and not, it'll add the darken, I guess, evenly. Like, let me just test it so I don't mess up what I'm saying. So that's multiply, and let's try it with normal now. Almost identical. No, there's a difference, and I think it doesn't affect the, well, it's affecting the highlight there though. I'm gonna have to get back to you on that one. Oh boy, that's embarrassing. I don't know why I feel like it works better then, because I switch it to multiply quite a bit, and I'm pretty sure it has a different effect, or I wouldn't be doing it. Maybe it's when I'm coloring. Well, I don't have to include that in the course. Yikes. Yeah, so at any rate, I would still try it though. I use these blending modes a lot. Like, one I can tell you that's pretty neat is if you go to color dodge, works like the dodge and burn tool. You can actually incorporate a little bit of color with it as you do it though. So you get that nice little hot spot effect like that. But you can also incorporate just a little bit of color as you do it. So I get that nice brightness in the eyes. One of his eyes look like they're kind of lighting up. But yeah, so this is really just like using the dodge tool right there. But then when you go to color it, which I'm almost there, I actually probably want to start adding some color to the character now. Let's go image, canvas size, width, 35. And then if you hit to the left here, it'll extend it to the right. Just like that. Let's go ahead and take this dude and hold Alt, drag it over, hold spacebar, move it over, and you can just get yourself a nice copy, rename this number 5, just keep pressing on. So yeah, I'll probably add a little bit of color to this real quick and show you how that dodge tool works, and then I'll call it good, because I know long content doesn't do as well on here. And that's really what my course stuff's all about too. So if you're into learning more and getting more in depth with the stuff, you'll be able to check that stuff out. So alright, so let's open this up. Got the character here with transparency locked, and I'm a backup junkie, so I'll make another backup there and make sure transparency is still locked. Alright, so I'll put this brush on color mode, and I actually want him to be wearing like a golden colored armor helmet. So I'll pick something in the gold family just to get it rolling. And I probably should make a selection first, but I'm just gonna go for it. That's a little too gold, but you can always knock it back with dropping the saturation. Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to do that. It's way too gold. But do that, and then you could probably take like a little bit of yellow or reddish tinge or whatever. Let's try a reddish orange. And let's try color dodge. This might be too much, but ain't too bad. But you definitely want to mix it up. You want to like get some different shades and stuff in there. You don't want it to all just be one color for sure. And then also you want to vary up the intensity. You know, like for instance, I'll drop the saturation on this quite a bit. You know, and I might have just a few little areas that are more saturated, you know, for light sources. Like that's way too much. Let's try a little more yellow. There we go. I think that looks a little more realistic. But it's funny how your eye will pick up on this stuff, like, you know, really quick as the viewer. But you have to like learn to break it down as the painter, you know, and make it work. So since that's the only thing that's colored right now, I can take advantage of that. I don't even have to make a selection. I can drop the saturation. So to me, that looks a lot more realistic. But then again, I'm just realizing too, I'm on an overly saturated screen, so I probably should move to my other screen. But hopefully that looks realistic. But the other thing that you can do again is hit Command J, make a backup. Probably should be naming these, by the way. And I'll just call this, I don't know, low saturation LS and brighter version or something. Just, you know, whatever you need to distinguish it, really. And what you can do there is you basically just have a floating layer over top. So you can like take the brighter version on the bottom, bump up the saturation again. Now if I toggle this on and off, I got that highly saturated one below it, which is actually too much, but I'll show you why we do that. And then we just take that top one and just erase certain areas where you want that saturation to be hotter. So it's a better way to use saturation, because if not, you'll end up overdoing it, or at least I do. I always overdo the saturation. So this is a good way to kind of experiment and slowly work it into some of your design without going too far, too fast or whatever. That's still a bit too hot. So I think I got some of that on that top one, just still a little too saturated. Yeah, I want something a little more dingy and realistic. And then as well, now this you'd probably want to make a selection, but you can, you know, jump up the opacity and knock down the brightness. And I'd probably want to do that just on the helmet so the skin tone doesn't come out too dark. But, you know, lots of ways to edit it and get it, you know, slowly, progressively looking like a real painting. So check back, and I'll make sure to post this when I'm done. So if you guys want to see the work, you can see it on Instagram, my Facebook. My Facebook's Ram Studios Comics, if you want to check that out. And yeah, so I appreciate everybody stopping by and viewing this. More on the way real soon. Keep drawing, keep having fun, and bye for now.